Good morning, everybody. My name is Alan Reed. I'm Director of Client Projects with Hart Square. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, the Office Less Nonprofit, to talk about how nonprofits can do best in the modern environment in terms of collaboration, knowledge management, and document management. With me today is my colleague Rob DeBell. Rob, can I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. I'm Rob DeBell. I'm the Managing Director of the consultancy practice at Hart Square. So my primary responsibilities are around ensuring the operational effectiveness of the practice, really, and in overseeing the projects that we deliver for clients. Great,
thank you very much. So essentially, from our experience of working across hundreds of not-for-profit projects, we're hearing a lot about what the challenges are and what people are doing to address the challenges. The great majority of projects that people are embarking on or have embarked on over recent years have been outward-facing projects to do with digital engagement, CRM, website projects, etc. Relatively little to do with our own effectiveness as organizations. So we'd like to talk about that, please. So what we will cover today, first of all, I'd like to go through a little bit of just one point about Hart Square. I think it's worth making. We're going to be talking about different software solutions that you can consider today. I just want to make the point that Hart Square are fiercely independent of any software or solution. So we know a lot about the solutions in the marketplace. We run tons of partner technology selection processes. We advise organizations all of the time. But those suppliers are not allowed to buy us a drink. We have to have clean hands. We have no commercial relationships with any of them. A little bit of webinar etiquette. So first of all, the session is recorded. That won't make much difference in terms of your data unless you're posting Q&A questions, so they will then be part of the recording. Your own data is completely safe and secure. We're not allowed to do anything with it. We're GDPR practitioners in our own right. We have a process of Q&A during the webinar. So there's a Q&A box. So please fire any questions into there about your own project, your own challenges, challenges in getting your organization to move or make any changes. Feel free. There's also a chat box for any technical support issues. And then if you put anything in there, one of our team will try and help you out with any technical issues that are ongoing. So that's all pretty straightforward. So let's carry on from there. We're covering the areas here. So first of all, setting out the challenge, what we're seeing in lots of different nonprofits as we deliver projects. We'd like to talk then about collaboration, project and task management. And that could be everything from starting a new fundraising campaign to thinking about creating a new type of membership, or just to improve the way that you manage a task within your own organization. We'll also then talk about knowledge management, document management, and how that, at a high level, at an interesting level, how that can be made to improve your organization as well. And finally, we have a Q&A session at the end with any questions that have come up. So let me carry on through. So first of all, I think we're all adapting to the new way of working. It's all feeling pretty normal now. We do keep hearing people still talking about when it gets back to normal in a few months' time. We saw this. I saw this yesterday, in fact, in private eye. The serious point is that it seems to be that this way of working can persist for a very long time, is likely to persist for a very long time. And here's another one on the same private eye. Essentially, we're going to have to get the best out of how we work. But the other main point we feel is that the opportunities to improve the way that nonprofits work internally so that they can carry out more of the mission is really nothing to do with COVID. It's a problem that's been there for many, many years, and this has just brought it to the fore, made it a little bit more acute. So why are we so awful? Why are nonprofits so awful at investing in themselves? Now, bearing in mind, Hart Square we live in the not-for-profit sector. We only work with the not-for-profit sector. We don't do banking and insurance. We revere the sector. We don't do anything. We're not criticizing lightly. But I think as a critical friend, we can point out where people are not making the best use of their time and money. So essentially, the clear thing is that the most expensive, the highest use of money for most nonprofits is the people in the organization, and that's completely understandable. You cannot expect your computer system to go and actually carry out the mission. An awful lot of this money is wasted, and we'll clarify that in terms of proportions and time, etc. So although one of the most important things organizations do is pull in income and deliver the mission, one of the largest uses of that income is being squandered. It's not a great use of time. We're also hearing that because organizations tend to feel that they're bad at projects, bad at managing knowledge, bad at delivering change within their own organization, it leads to a lot of staff feeling frustrated and actually higher turnover. And mostly the thing that we keep wondering as we go around is, why are so many nonprofits working with the same tool set that we all had in the 1990s? Meaning that when we start a new task with our colleagues, the first thing we do is we start a Word document, we start an Excel spreadsheet of lists, we inbox bomb each other with emails saying, how about this, how are you doing with that? And that's the way we keep each other up to date. And we're providing the same tools that were available 20 years ago and weren't terribly good then, and we're expecting to be more effective and to deal with the higher volumes that we have today, and it's just not working. So what we're seeing is that most nonprofits have invested significantly in their outward-facing projects, and this is our bread and butter. We don't criticize this in its own right. So we spend most of our lives doing fundraising, CRM, grants management, digital engagement, website projects, membership systems projects. Those are what we do, and they get all of the money, they get all of the attention and the glory. In the meantime, staff are still working in incredibly ineffective ways, and this crisis has shown a real light on that. We've had organizations that are saying we can't get decisions made because the committee insists on having a piece of paper. We're all drowning under the volume. So a fundamental principle that we believe is that nonprofits, if they're going to make the most of the money that they have, and they're going to make the most of staff time, and they're going to make the most of the mission and be able to support their mission most effectively, they have to invest some time and money in themselves in order to get the best out of their money and time and their staff resource. So I showed this on the last one. It's a really simple principle. If we're looking after ourselves, we're better equipped to carry out the mission in the most effective way. Some stats here. A huge amount, and we see this over and over, a huge amount of the working time when people have poor access to data and poor tools for doing their job is simply wasted. So we're spending we see people spending a huge amount of time looking for information that colleagues have and should be shared and isn't. An awful lot of the time, those searches are frustrated. People aren't being able to find what they need in order to do the job. You can see the hours of time wasted, and therefore the money, and therefore the lost opportunity of what people should and could be doing. It's not a statistic, but we see a lot of this where a lot of the nonprofits we're working with experience surprisingly high turnover of staff. They have a perception of themselves almost that there's no point in having a good idea around here because it'll just sink into the mire. Too many people need to be involved. Too many meetings. No one's got any time. I can't even get a meeting room in the old days. All of those things point to people being frustrated at the lack of effectiveness of their own organizations. And these are challenges that are perfectly able to be tackled. We'd like to carry out a poll, if we may, just to hear what organisations on the webinar are finding themselves. So can I please ask? I'm just going to put a poll on the screen. Just 1 second. And I'd like to ask about the tools that you're using within your organisation. Do you, within your own organisation, have specific tools for your own effectiveness, for your own best use of time, or are you still essentially using Excel? Are you still essentially, manage things in person and scribbling to-do lists to yourselves and then inbox bombing each other? So could I just get your views of who is consistently using these tools within the organization? Okay, so I'll just give it a few more seconds. And then, good, I'm going to stop there. And I'll share the results. So that's really interesting. So what we're seeing is pretty much everyone is using remote meetings and conferencing. That's not surprising. I suspect the numbers would have been different before March this year, but that's pretty much a base. What we see is that switching to remote meetings doesn't automatically mean people are doing fewer meetings or that those meetings are more effective or that people are sharing information more effectively. Slightly disappointingly, we're seeing that only a little over 40% of people are using any kind of project or task management help. Amazingly, only a little over 60% are using any kind of group chat or WhatsApp conversations instead of inbox bombing each other through Outlook and similar. Pleased to see that a significant number, more than 2/3, are using some form of document management and sharing, as opposed to just having a rat's nest of folders with lots of versions of documents in. So that's pretty interesting. So quite a long way to go in order to formalize how people are working. Great, thank you very much for that. So what I'd like to go through is some of the problems that we see over and over. And this is something we've talked about before, but it's such a huge suck hole of wasted time, it's worth covering briefly. So our research into the management of not-for-profits shows that the average middle management person is having 4 to 7 meetings per day with the colleagues, with the internal colleagues. In the old days, that would cause meeting room chaos, but even now, it's still causing diary challenges and huge amounts of time where people are just finding slots with each other. One of the most common pieces of feedback we get is that I've got no time to do any work. This is why I suspect there's a significant proportion of the people on this webinar who would agree that, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling overloaded, and part of it is too many meetings, too many updates within meetings, and no time to actually get on with what you're tasked with. Within these meetings, whether they're virtual or in person, everyone assembles and prepares to make notes. And tries to fight off any to-do list items coming their way and push them all onto everyone else. Then the way that we update each other following the meeting, and we find out what's going on, and we track progress for whatever it is that we're trying to achieve, is that it's all done through everyone sending to all and replying to all, and bearing in mind that within the course of a week, this might be happening 20 odd times and 20 odd threads of tasks that we're all supposed to be looking after, and that's just 1 week. That's a huge volume of redundant emails. Your greatest sense of achievement for the day might be how many emails you've deleted, and that's not a great use of time or terribly rewarding. So then what we have is huge amounts of staff frustration. We hear about people who are leaving simply because they don't feel they can get anything done. People who are overwhelmed because they're not able to get to the main areas of their jobs, and nothing happens. That's the biggest frustration we hear around organizations. And then of course the cycle just repeats the following week. So this is the most common model in most nonprofits that we're working with, and the obvious thing is, okay, let's break out of this. So Other common problems that we see: lost knowledge. Version hell, documents called marketing campaign new, marketing campaign really new, marketing campaign latest, and nobody knows what on earth they should be looking at, and things are lost, and huge amounts of time are wasted trying to figure it out. People using Outlook as their, or whatever email client, as their filing cabinet. We had someone saying that they were really missed with their internal IT because Outlook topped out at 50 gigs. And they'd been using, they had 10 years of knowledge in there and they needed more space and so on. Of course, it means it's not shared effectively. When that person leaves, you know, politeness dictates that no one is able to see their emails for the last 10 years. And even if they could, who could find anything? And of course, everything is in there littered with attachments and so on. Staff frustration we've talked about. And then this attitude, we can't get anything done around here, and of course, huge sums of wasted money. We're seeing that the average middle management person within a non-profit is simply stressed out of their minds, and the volume is high. The use of time is low quality, and people are not feeling that this is a rewarding way to work. So again, we have to break out of this cycle. So what tools are there? How are they sold? What are people using them for, where they are using them? I've got an ad here from Monday.com. As I say, we are religiously independent of any piece of software. So this is just, it could be Slack, it could be Trello. I just want to play it because it shows how these things are sold. You have to set aside that everyone on here is annoyingly attractive and looks like they've never done a day's work in their lives. And then you can see, you know, how these things are promoted. So I'm just going to stop that. And essentially, we you know, are a little bit cautious about playing an ad for any bit of software because we don't want to be aligned to any bit of software, and we turn the sound off just to make it a bit more purist. But essentially, it's sold as a vision of everyone communicating, coming together, and being able to share and collaborate very effectively. There is a significant element of truth to that. So essentially, the collaboration tools that we see being used most commonly are essentially platforms that allow people to work together more effectively, to communicate with each other more effectively. Communication is one of the strongest elements of these tools. And what it's trying to do in many ways is recognize the fact that the Outlook inbox, and we've spoken to people who have thousands, you know, and I mean over 10,000 of items in their Outlook inbox. So it's just a big trash pile. It's a big cesspit of awful things. And the last thing anyone wants to do if you want to get a job done is come along and put something on top of that trash pile and expect that it's going to get a reasonable response. So with collaboration tools, one of the most important things is essentially finding appropriate channels for communication. So that includes messaging, so that, you know, people can have more of a WhatsApp style conversation around a topic instead of reply to all emails around a topic, and then when you come back after a few days off, you can't figure out what's happened on that topic. Video messaging and meetings, obviously, but also actual calls and you know, one-on-one calls. Communications is one of the most important elements of it. And then, of course, integration with other things that you have to do, so that you're having as few things happening outside your collaboration toolset and your knowledge sharing toolset as possible, so that you can go to one place and link to these documents, link to these task lists, link to the latest position on any particular item. So Just a few sample screenshots. This one's from Slack. It doesn't matter which one it is, but a fairly typical thing that we see is, of course, the conversations are happening not as reply to alls, but as a follow-on series of conversations that everyone can see. We're all used to this from WhatsApp and other tools, and then we see the worst of it in our email. We're all used to the fact that we have different teams and projects here. We're used to alerts like this telling us what needs attention and what's changed. So again, I'm not having to look through this enormous pile and see what's happening. I'm getting it raised up to me and provided to me as decision support. More conversations happening where it's a stream of information rather than a disconnected series of updates. And of course, I'm then able to engage with whoever is involved in this topic directly there. Fairly standard that you would expect, nice looking dashboards that you configure that show you where you are and where you are across your team. And of course, it's not just the project manager, if you like, who's looking at this, it's the entire team. Nobody wants their area to go into the amber if they can help it. So we're all working effectively together to try and stop that happening. Of course, the dashboard is broken out into different streams so that we're able to manage the progress across any task that we're doing together. Another fairly common set of dashboards. So you're categorizing your to-do list effectively. You're categorizing your to-do list effectively into different streams, and then within the streams, you're able to see where different elements are, who's involved in it, and what communications are happening there. Very similar here with a little bit more detail. So what we see with productivity tools is that it's the place that people start their day effectively, where most of us are used to going to Outlook to start our day and then deleting hundreds of things. You go here, and this helps you prioritize and manage what you're going to spend your time on and what the real alerts are, rather than something being 100 emails down that you haven't gotten to yet. Okay, so what do we actually need from collaboration and knowledge sharing tools? It's really pretty straightforward. In some ways, one of the questions that's already come up on the Q&A is what tools to use. What our view is that the choice of tools is much less important than the way that it is put in. So the difference between the Microsoft Teams suite and Slack suite, or the Google Docs suite and the Microsoft Office suite, they're all pretty good. They're all, they have marginal pros and cons. It's the commitment behind it that will cause it to succeed or fail, and we'll come to that in a little bit as well. So these are the important elements that we find to be most important. It needs to be easy to get in. It needs to be easy to use. It needs to be easy for your management team to say, you will use this, please, without it being too cryptic. Your place to go for calendars and tasks, and what do I need to do today, and who do I need to chase? Your communications hub, of course. The place you go for more structured projects, like project management. Bearing in mind, we're all doing mini projects, every week. We just don't call them projects. And then you've got the more structured stuff with multiple phases or multiple items and multiple people. We're all doing those too, or we're all involved in those too. And then it needs to be your hub for your shared knowledge, your documents, in many cases, messages and emails. In many cases, as things are evolving and developing, this is the place you can go to see all of that. So a pretty straightforward set of stuff. We're doing all of this stuff already, but what we're also doing, of course, is we're working around having a poor tool set to do it. So we're trying to cobble it together in Excel and Outlook and Word and so on. Must-have tools. Here is a fairly straightforward list. Some pointers just when implementing these kind of tools. Some fairly common tools that people use there. As I say, the commitment and the project to put it in and to bring people along with it and get people on board is much more important than the particular choice of tool. This is where one of the most important things we find is that the leadership of an organization step up. It cannot be done with the IT team just buying the tools. They will do a perfectly good job of that, but the IT team don't do your appraisals. The IT team are not necessarily tasked with seeing your organizational objectives being met. If the leadership team don't step up to see the value of this kind of change, then essentially don't bother. It's just not going to work. And that's the challenge to the leadership team to get that across. So essentially, it's not expensive. It's widely available. It's been road tested for years by other people, so the bugs have been ironed out. So why is everyone still drowning under the volume and struggling with a poor set of tools to do our job? So fairly typical problems that we see on these kind of projects. It's put in as a tech solution and not seen as the organization-wide program of change that it needs to be. Program of change and benefits. Treated as an IT challenge. People aren't involved. So I've heard some people say this is an overhead, it's an extra thing for me to do because they haven't been brought into the process and helped to understand that this is for their benefit and will save a load of time every day. Lack of training is really common, so it's dumped on people, it looks friendly, off you go. It's not set out as an organizational goal and goals for individuals as well. You know, with nonprofits and with ourselves, we have to be really nice and say the most important asset is the people. But if we're being strict about it, people leave, you know, people change. Our most important asset in most organizations is our knowledge and data, and that's what enables us to carry on. So part of our goals should be that we should be working actively. People's time should be spent on preserving and developing that knowledge and data. We see this a lot. So some are using it, some are not. Some are using Slack, some are using Trello, some are just using Excel and Word. And then it's not enforced. It's not something. We have people backsliding. We have people, you know, reverting back to Excel, and that means that, of course, everyone has to work around them and ask them for the information. Put in poorly is a really common challenge. SharePoint, for instance, is often used as a swear word, as it is as a really enabling piece of tech. We, Hart Square, live or die by it, but we also recognize that it needs someone to care about it. It needs to be evolving. It needs to change as we change. It's not a put in and forget technology, or else people will just bounce off and revert back to their old ways of working. I'd like to do another quick poll, if I may. So, if we can. Sorry, just waiting for Zoom to catch up. And then let's go to. So, I'd like to understand from the delegate list, for the benefit of the rest of the delegates, are you still using these tools within your organization, please? Are you still doing this, even if it's you know you shouldn't, or have you successfully changed to no longer having these behaviors? I'll just allow a few more seconds, please. Okay, that's pretty, well, it's not surprising, but it's still pretty damning. So pretty much everyone is working in all of the ways that we've been saying are a huge stress hole. So every organization is still doing this, whether it's 100% and it's the only way of working or still partially, it's still a pretty poor indictment. Still everyone keeping stuff in Outlook as a filing cabinet. Attachments are the dry rot of knowledge management and version control and being able to share effectively. And we have lots of rat's nests of folders where no one can find things, and lots of versions where the time is wasted creating it, because in 6 months' time, people will go to some other version and forget that what you created. All right, well, there's a significant problem out there, is what we're seeing with that. Thank you very much for that, everybody. So, how do you choose from the different tech options that are out there? There are a few things. So, a lot of the tools that are out there are actually free for nonprofits. So the Google Docs suite is very cost effective or free. There are free versions of Slack, for instance, up to a certain organization size and certain amounts of facilities. So partly it's looking at the pricing. Bearing in mind, we find the great majority of the cost, if you're going to do this properly, and if you're not going to do it properly, don't do it, is about your time and the help you require to get it in and working properly. Think about your existing technology and what needs to be integrated. Think about your organizational culture. If you are a Microsoft Office-based organization, well, that would lead you one way and lead you perhaps towards developing teams to the level of detail and the other parts of the Microsoft Office suite. If you hate Microsoft like poison and you think they're a faceless megacorp, then you can go to the other faceless megacorp, which is Google, and they have really inexpensive tools and pretty much do everything that Microsoft Suite does, but in a much more cost-effective way. It's just a cultural change. We would suggest trying a few out. The difference between these tools is not what's going to cause your project to succeed or fail, but there are some that you'll like more than others and some that you'll feel will be more easily adopted within your organization. We do have a thing about don't be anxious about the tools. You can't really go too far wrong with the mainstream tools for collaboration and knowledge and document management. And it really comes down to a personal choice and what you can afford within there. So settle on something, explore, kick around some others, and then move on. Okay, what I'd like to do here is move on to another specific area that we have in the webinar around knowledge and document management, every bit as important as collaboration management. So I'm just going to stop there and hand over to my colleague Rob.
Thanks, Al. I should just take over the screen sharing, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that should now be coming through on screen. So yeah, document and knowledge management, as Alan's been talking about, is a key topic that we talk about a lot with with clients. That's been the case for some years, not just since the outbreak, but obviously it's sharpened some minds around it as well since the kind of move to virtual that we've all been through. We haven't got hours and hours today. We could spend a lot of time talking about this. So what we really wanted to do really was just to give some of the kind of headline introduction. What are the key terms? What do the key terms mean? Because often used interchangeably. Just kind of at a headline level, how do we see the difference between document and knowledge management, and equally what the different systems do in that respect. Talk a little bit about the objective of trying to manage your knowledge, manage your information, about why it's important, about what it amounts to in practice, and then what we thought we'd do actually is give a little showcase just to the approach we've taken within Hart Square, where we use Microsoft SharePoint, but the principles apply across, whether you're using G Suite or whatever else it may be. So just give you a little sort of insight into that, and then kind of summarise what gets described as the knowledge journey that we're on, and yeah, hopefully give you a few kind of takeaways and hints along there. So if we just start with me working out how to advance the slides. Oh, there we go. Just as a very kind of open statement headline, this is not dictionary definition or anything, but broadly speaking, in the reality of the conversations that we have internally and with clients, when we're talking about document management, we're really talking about storing information. When we're talking about knowledge management, we're talking about adding some kind of context to that information. The reality, like I say, is that we often blur the terms and mix in information management as well there, but there is a specific kind of discipline within the two, and one of those key differences, I'm not going to read through all of the bullet points on screen, but when you're looking at the systems and what they do, I think that the key ones to draw out here probably are that with document management systems, they tend to work on the assumption that people who are using them know what they're looking for. So they go looking for particular stuff, And what the document management system does is allow structure, organization of content, and it is documents. Yeah, so it is your classic document storage, but in an organized way with a little bit of basic taxonomy and tagging along the way. Knowledge management systems have a different purpose, really. They're intended to provide information. We can call it decision support information, or information to help people complete the tasks they're doing, but it's more than just documents potentially. And it's almost like these where people can ask questions. So the search is very different and potentially different, and there's a lot more context, particularly the relevancy of certain information, and the timeliness, making sure things are up to date, that kind of stuff. So there is a distinct difference within what those two systems are all about. And we think about it in terms of what is our objective of doing any of this in such, because we see document management really as kind of a cornerstone or a baseline within your knowledge management piece. So our overall objective we describe as being capturing and sharing the information that basically you need to run your organization, to deliver your services, to do what you do. You know, for most of us, we are information driven, whether that's about providing an evidence base or about informing the decisions we make. It is about overall using the information, the knowledge, the expertise that we build up and the experience we have. To do this, the things we need to create are a single version of the truth, so that when we go looking for answers, we find the one and only answer, or the piece of evidence, we find the latest. We'll see a little bit more of that in a minute. It's about building that shared understanding of our overall knowledge, so that you have that business continuity, the resilience, the sharing across the organisation is really important. And equally, it's a collaborative effort to capture and store all this in the first place. This isn't about one person or one team, one group being responsible for collating and collecting everything. This is about harnessing the knowledge that we naturally generate and create and build as we go. And we'll see that in the knowledge journey, which is kind of the summary at the very end of this. So in terms of what it is in practice, this is a slide that's worth reading the bullets on, because I think it summarizes it quite nicely. It is about making sure that the latest and only version of the right information is easily available, and it's available to everybody who needs it and is allowed to access to it, because there is a whole security piece around this as well. It's there when they need it and when it's ready for use. So it has to be ready for use. It's not a formative version. It is the right and single version, and it's available however anybody wants to access it, because people's ability to access things quickly is what means that they will use it and it will be available to them to make their good decisions. This slide you saw earlier in Alan's deck, it's a recent survey that showed kind of the percentages of wasted time is one way of looking at it. Thing I just wanted to point out is the last piece actually, which is a day a week saved when you eliminate status meetings. This is really about the knowledge management and about the information sharing, making things accessible piece. Status meetings are essentially those meetings you have where all you're actually doing, in the nicest sense, we all do it, but in the nicest sense, all you're doing is telling people what's going on. You're not asking for decisions. You're not collaborating as such on moving forward. You're really just playing in and updating people. If you can eliminate those by making the information about what's going on far more visible and far more easily shared around the place, people will self-serve. You can cut down on status meetings, and you can then save time and focus your efforts more keenly. So that's why I wanted to highlight that one for that particular slide. Looking across your organisation and thinking about why things are important. This is why document and knowledge management are important. This is about, I've mentioned it already, but it's about good decision making. It's about building expertise, sharing that knowledge across the organisation, having everybody contribute to it, so that both your information and your knowledge and your people who will feel more bought in if they're part of this, they become assets to you. And we talked last year about sort of data is the new oil and all that kind of thing. It builds on that theme about making sure that we put to good use all of that knowledge and expertise and experience that we build up in the form of information along the way, so that we can deploy it and apply it going forward, and so that our people use it and are happy to contribute, because it is vital that they feed in on all channels as well. So that's the kind of the background, the headline stuff on it. On what we think. Like I say, we thought if we just kind of show you, we use SharePoint, we've implemented document management, we would say confidently that we've done that. We are seeking to move towards a more knowledge management piece, because there are multiple channels, like I said, on which all of us are learning and gaining insight and we want to be able to put that into the pool, govern it, and use it and make the most of all of that stuff that we do. You know, we have hundreds of clients, we do hundreds of client days every month, you know, with our consultants out and about, and people learning valuable things that we'd like to play in to all of our future work. So I'll fly forward. So we've done document management. The problem we were trying to solve, and again, Alan's talked about it earlier and you've answered a poll around it, you know, previously we had a traditional file share hierarchy, you know, about 72 layers deep, and you had to click for somewhere between 7 and 10 minutes before you found a file rather than a folder, because everybody was working under their own. It's natural, right? You'll do it, but you're working how my mind works, and you really don't want to plug into that. You want to just be able to naturally find something the way you think and the way you work. But you know, this is what we had previously, and it's what we were trying to address. And it caused the problems. I won't go back over the stuff that Alan's already covered. So the approach we took was to not just dive in, and it wasn't about, oh, let's deploy SharePoint and just replicate this morass of shared files in the hierarchy. We sat down and we worked through, you know, what is the logic under which we will create and store documents. That was our starting point, and actually that's the baseline of everything that we do in this respect. We worked it through and planned it and structured it, and we invested in doing that before we even looked at what technology we were going to use, and before we signed up for any technology even. That enabled us to give a clear description to ourselves, actually, of what we were doing and why, which meant we could give an explanation out to everybody that we needed, every employee of Hart Square, everybody who needed to be involved, because people need to understand the whys and the wherefores, not just be told this is the system you're going to use. It's not about tech, as Alan said. So that's now done. We have a good explanation for it. We play it into inductions whenever anybody joins, and it's all in the refresher sessions that we run routinely throughout across the company. We have a very simple tagging system across the documents that we use. The clone sites piece, most of our work, as I say, is with clients, and we work with hundreds of them. So to help us, you'll see one in a minute, you'll see a document library in a second. And basically what we do is we have a standard. It is simple, it's effective, it gets you where you need to be, and it is literally consistent. So when a new client joins, as they're doing week on week, we create a clone site, so it looks the same whatever we do. And that familiarity is what gives people the comfort and the ability then to actually benefit from it. And finally, you know, it's a thing. It's not something that we just assume everybody within Hart Square will understand when they join. You know, it's not always the case that they will. We talk about it, we joke about it, people, you know, we have a bit of banter about it, but it is a thing, and that's really, really important because it is embedded now in the DNA of Hart Square. This is how we work, and we really do believe that we benefit from that. The protocols that we put behind it, because you have to have, you know, these pieces that form the whole structure of what you put in place so that you get the benefit from it. You know, I mean, nowadays we talk about GDPR compliance. When we were doing this, it was pre-GDPR, so but it's still data protection. It's the same principle. You know, keep the data, keep your information in one place as far as you possibly can, and then give people the means by which to access it wherever they are, on what device they are. What you don't want is data being federated. You don't want it being distributed out on all kinds of devices. You want it to be here, central, you want it to be governed, you want it to be secure, and to do that, it has to be accessible. You don't want the copies, you don't want the versions and dates, as Alan said earlier, in file names. And absolutely, you know, if you ever come to work at Hart Square, one of the first rules of Hart Square is no email attachments. Yeah, that is just permeated through everything now. So those are the protocols behind the document management piece we put in place, and then there's a cultural piece as well, and a behavioural piece. You understand the encouragement said already about, you know, making sure that we've got a good solid explanation that everybody understands about why we do it. You do have to have enforcement. You know, there's people mean well and whatever, but you have to have some enforcement. You have to have a gatekeeper. There have to be consequences for non-compliance, you know, because at the end of the day, most people who join us, I would say this is not what they're used to. Most people are still, it's a rash generalization, right? But most people are still used to having folder hierarchies of some sort. There are no folders in a document library, it's literally none. Yeah. So people, you know, have this challenge. It's what's easy for me, and oh yeah, sorry, but you know, and there's an exception for this, an exception for that, and you're on your smartphone, so I sent you an attachment. Well, no, don't do it. You know, I can access Word, PowerPoint, anything I want on my smartphone. I can access SharePoint. I can access my documents as if I was on a bigger screen. That's the difference. So you do have to have a person, a function, you know, people in charge. You need leadership from the very top of your organizations to make it a reality on the ground. And what that can do, this is not, it's the big reveal, right? But it's not like, rocket science. This is a very simple, excuse me, very simple document library that exists a few hundred times within the Hart Square SharePoint environment. It's just a listing of documents. It happens to be by default sorted most recent first with a few very simple tags, just so that it really helps with sorting and filtering. So that you can quite quickly get to the information you need. The search is really, really easy. It's full text, you can do it within a library from across the board, and the tags are all very supportive of that. But this is what is then in place, like I say, hundreds of times across all of our various different clients. It means that any consultant switching between clients, which is what they do, can very, very quickly get to the information they need, and so can I from a holistic perspective. As I say, I oversee sort of a lot of the projects we run. So when we're talking internally and externally about what good looks like, we're not complacent by any stretch, and we're far from perfect. We do, this is not 100% compliance, right? It's a reality. But generally speaking, we look at it, we don't have multiple versions to consolidate. We don't have email attachments flying around the place. You don't see versions in our file names. And that all helps reduce the time it takes us to find information. And this is me, this is a real life experience for me. I routinely have to go and find information to help me make, I try and make good decisions. And I do feel that I don't spend as much time as I used to trying to find stuff. And I do feel that it's being regularly updated. I'm seeing more of that as I look across things. So, I'd like to think that I'm making fewer ill-informed decisions. That's certainly the ambition and the intention of doing this. And therefore, it gives us more space to generate ideas and to innovate. So that's all really around the kind of document management piece that we've got pretty well embedded now. This is just to give a quick view, literally just 2 slides, give you a quick view on where we're going with it, which is moving towards more knowledge management piece. And to take an example, so as well as all the client-side stuff we've got what we call a method, which is where a lot of our templates and guidance and samples are kept to enable consultants to get up and running quickly with new projects and to use the consistency and the branding that is important to us. So again, first glance, this looks like just like another standard document library. The grouping at the top is, again, no folders, it's just a filtering thing, a grouping based on one of the tags that's in place. And that's what we've been running with for quite a while. But we are conscious that we want to be able to do a bit more than that, and we want to start to build this out. So what we've now been able to do, without changing anything, and the document library still exists, and if I want to, I can just go to the screen that you just saw. It's not interactive, it's a shop, but you know what I mean. We can just go to that and use it in the same way we do everything else. But on top of that, we've been able to put a different interface, which is about helping people when you're in a particular place in your head, I'm working on a business case or I'm working on a partner selection, where's all of our templates and guidance? I don't want to look at it by different document types, I want to look at it by the task in hand. So I'll come here and I can drill down straight through. I talk about we put this in place. It's obviously really stupid this, yeah, I could put this in place myself, but nonetheless, this is for Hart Square, and it means I can focus task in hand, I'll go to business case, drill down. What's more than that is not only have we got that documents, but we're starting to feed in some other information. You can see on screen, read the blog. We've got an internal blog that runs, and that's a way that we like to share the information that we build up. And both the blogs themselves and the comments that come back on it, because it's obviously open to everybody to comment, is starting to feed this part as well. So that's the part where, again, we're looking at less structured information. We're looking at alternative methods of providing knowledge into that pot to help us build an overall organizational view of stuff and what's going on. So I appreciate that's quite a quick kind of run through, but that's kind of where we're at. We need to add in also, our collaboration. We want to build those links out with our collaboration tool, which is Airtable, with our Civi CRM, with our use of Microsoft Teams. This is how we move from document management to knowledge management, we think. And this, like I say, by way of summary, in some ways, if you want to take away cut out and keep thing, the knowledge journey really is, we're creating new knowledge, we create information. I mean, if there's one thing we're all good at, it's creating files, right? So we are creating information all the time, it's what we do. What we need to do is to identify that knowledge is critical to our strategy. We have to buy into that fact that it's critical to our operations and our strategy. We build things based on our knowledge. So therefore we collect it in a way intending for it to be shared by others, and we put in place the tools and processes to do that. We have that governance around it so that we're reviewing knowledge, making sure it's relevant and contextualized and has that additional layer on top of just documentation. We then share documentation and the informal content that goes around it. We enable the access to it through both pull and push. So I think I mentioned earlier, you can set up alerts and workflows to highlight stuff and notify people. Equally, the search just has to be nailed on. And this is the journey that we go on that enables us to use knowledge as one of the cornerstones within our business to help move us forward and help us make good decisions. So, trying to find a kind of a way to summarize some of that, a key to success is findability, because if you put all those pieces in place and make it really easy for people to find the information they need, that's absolutely key. There's a key outcome. If people can find it, they'll use it. They'll use it and make good decisions. They'll also then feed it. They'll put their stuff in there as well. For sure, you absolutely need the culture, the processes, the governance that go behind it to build it and give it that structure. And again, that's where some document management technique helps to give a solid foundation. But findability is absolutely key, particularly when you're moving towards the less structured information that you want to include in that pot. So the first actions for you that I would recommend, if this is where you're thinking to go, do what we did. Spend some time actually figuring out. Don't worry so much about the tech just yet. Spend some money thinking about how will you create and store documents. Start to plan your taxonomy and your search, because those two work hand in hand to make sure that you can find things well. Back to findability. And start to be thinking about the governance that goes around everything that you've got and everything that you do. Yeah, there you go. Three takeaways for today. Like I said, there's plenty more that obviously I could talk about, but I think for today that's hopefully plenty to get your thoughts flowing, and we can pick up stuff in Q&A and beyond that as well. But yeah, I'll pass back to you, Alan.
Fine. Thank you very much, Rob. That was that's really insightful. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen, if I may, and then talk about how to make it all work. So we do a lot of knowledge management and collaboration projects with our clients, and it's not a pitch for Hart where you can buy help in 100 different places. One of the key things that comes out of it, we find, once the change is underway and it's happened, it's one of the most common words we hear is people starting to talk about the fact that they feel more empowered once the changes has happened. So yes, the time saving, but it's feeling more empowered. So an example for us this week, in fact, was that we were working with a particular charity doing a CRM and digital engagement project, and they had to stop for a year because they were merging with this other charity. And so they just stopped for a year. And then we got a call on Monday saying, oh, can we do some things really urgently? Our head's back in the project space. And within a few minutes of the call, we were, I was personally back familiar with exactly where the project had been left, everything that had been discussed, the plans that were the next steps, who was involved in what, and all of those things, because we've done 50 projects since then, and it's all gone from my head. So knowing that I can go to one place and it's all there, and within minutes I could have a sensible conversation with that organization and our own team is genuinely empowering. The other thing that we hear a lot is that the stress goes down hugely. So stress is not having too much work to do, we find, and we do our own research on this. Stress isn't just having too much work to do. It's worrying if you've forgotten something. It's worrying whether you're going to get shouted at next or be embarrassed by because you thought you were supposed to do something and you forgot about it. It's worrying that this is over here happening and you don't know quite where it is, and you're kind of responsible for it. So when those areas, when those things become visible and transparent, and you have to spend a lot less time trying to rootle it around and find out what's going on, the stress level goes down. And again, we hear those softer factors coming out as significant benefits. So how do we go about getting there? I'll just do a couple of points and then we want to get to a Q&A, please. So some take homes. One of the main things we find is making senior management step up to this. This is an organizational and cultural change. It can't just be here is given to the IT team and then come back at 3 months later and start shouting at people. The IT team has no authority to make people change the way they work, and is not involved in the appraisals process or anything like that. Senior management have got to value it and have got to step up and be involved, or don't do it. People and change. And by the way, people don't like change. There's the cliche that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and it's kind of true that you can have these great ideas that we're going to value our data and our knowledge, but if no one is being grumpy about the fact when somebody carries on sending attachments and refuses to engage with that, if it's not tackled and those conversations don't happen, then you're going to have a partial delivery, and that's no good. So it's got to be treated on the basis of tackling backsliding, of bringing people along, trying to enthuse people, but then also make sure people understand its importance to the organization as well. There are always lots of things that will consume your busyness and your time, especially if you're wasting a lot of time on working in ineffectual ways. It's got to be treated as a project. You've got to get help. You've got to formalize it and let people know what's going on, and then deliver it as a program of change. And then effectively, if you don't tackle it properly, if you don't treat it as the important thing that it is, it just becomes another project that we failed at. It becomes a crash bang wallet that is almost embarrassing to talk about, and some people over there are using it, but most people aren't. So focus on it as a people project and a change project. The tech is important, but relatively trivial in terms of the time and the money. It's all about getting people to change. Okay, we've got quite a few Q&A questions, and please feel free to drop in any more if you'd like. I'm going to ask my colleague Joyce to read out the Q&A questions, if you will. We're going to send the slides to everybody after the webinar. Rob, if you don't mind coming and joining me on the panel for Q&A. And then Joyce, are you okay to start with the first Q&A question?
Yes, thanks, Alan. So we have a question. We tried to minimize the use of platforms for communication. Otherwise, there's too much information flying around. How can we use Outlook as well as another in sync?
Rob, do you want to comment on that one first?
Yeah. So let me just call up the question. You just read it back, Joyce. Sorry, I didn't quite catch all of it.
Yeah, no problem. We tried to minimize the use of platforms for communication. Otherwise, there's too much information flying around. How can we use Outlook as well as another in sync?
That's what I thought you said. I mean, in terms of using Outlook and another platform for communication, I think the decision you have to make. So we, for example, use Outlook on the one hand and Teams on the other. We use Teams largely for internal use. We do use it for meetings and stuff, but in terms of information sharing and communication, we use it for stuff that is less persistent, I suppose. So it's less system of record. Outlook tends to be that kind of, you want to send people things to people where they need to consider it. Maybe it's on a group basis, but people need to consider it. It's informative, and then they will, reply, make decisions, join a meeting or whatever. Teams tends to be more, in our world, Teams tends to be more kind of here and now, a bit more conversational. But so we use that as our alternative communication platform, and you have to have the kind of just an understanding of the protocols around those two, and that can help you to contain it. This is what I was, there's too much information, so don't use so many platforms, but you do need, it's helpful to have more than one. Your challenge then comes through in the knowledge management piece, actually, of how do you capture, there'll be some really good quality information in that less formal Teams platform. But what you need to be able to do is actually synchronize that almost into your document management piece. So for us, getting Teams and SharePoint working together is the key there. So it is about horses for courses, it's about finding the right platform, but it's about minimizing them. Choose the use case, test them out, and then only use Outlook for a certain purpose and use Teams or another chat type platform for a different style of communication and a different level of content.
Absolutely. And there's an element of that. So I guess you might have noted just how much Rob was saying, and this talks to this and this talks to this, so that it's really, really important that they do all talk to each other, whatever, if it's a Google platform and you're using Google Hangouts, linking to Google Docs, that's all fine as well, as long as everything talks to each other. A part of it is recognizing that, for instance, Outlook is just rubbish at a conversation. It's the worst place to have a conversation. But Teams or another messaging platform is pretty good. It's a lot like WhatsApp, in having that conversation. But WhatsApp is rubbish at linking to your document management system, so you would then say, all right, well, in our case, it's Teams because it's great at linking to SharePoint. Outlook is very good at linking to SharePoint. Outlook is pretty good at linking to Zoom as well, so that your meetings can be launched and so on from within Outlook. So it's recognizing what it is you're trying to achieve and the tools for doing it, but making sure they all talk to each other. Whichever tool set you have, they must share. Great. Joyce, can we go to the next question, please?
Do most people get help when doing this?
Well, historically, no, and that's where a lot of the problems came. Look, we provide this stuff, so we are automatically biased. But I will say again, you can get the help in 100 different places. It's not about Hart Square, but an awful lot of the challenges that we see are that these things have been put in badly. The IT team or equivalent were given the task to doing it without the authority to make the change. So SharePoint becomes a swear word, as I've said before. You get partial usage. You get the worst of all worlds with you're just creating different silos, and it becomes another failure. There's been a recognition over, I'd say, the last 3 years, and it's accelerating, that this needs to be treated as a proper culture and change project, with the tech being an important thread through it. Senior management need to be involved. It needs some investment, but the business case is amazing. The amount of time saved versus the amount of time to put it in, and the cultural benefits are a no-brainer. So yes, I'd say in the majority of projects now, people will seek varying degrees of help to do it. Rob, unless you don't want to add to that, then so next question then, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How do people look after it once it is in place?
Rob, I guess that one's for you.
Yeah, depending on what it is, I suppose. I mean, that's the governance piece, really. You have to have roles. They don't have to be kind of full-time roles as such, but you need people who are tasked with ensuring that your knowledge is maintained, that the rules are followed, the protocols are followed, that data is being kept up to date. Again, thematically, that relates into our obligations under GDPR compliance as well. But it does take. It's not something that you can put in place and then expect just natural adherence and people will automatically just get their heads around it and use it, and it'll all feed itself. It needs dedicated time, it needs dedicated resource, and yes, that goes well beyond the point where you actually launch a piece of technology, because it's cultural, it's change, and it needs that governance piece behind it. So yes, you have to have a role and a function.
And it's not a technical role, I would add to that. It's about enforcing the culture and the change. If someone sends an email internally with an attachment on it, somebody within Hart Square will comment and say, look, and if it's a new person, don't do that. And it's that level of enforcement or encouragement. Great. I'm going to pause on Q&A because I'm conscious of time. Just one final thing to say. We have a really important seminar that the majority of the leadership in the not-for-profit sector attend. It's Chase Live in September. It's where you go to learn how other non-profits are tackling these kind of challenges, to learn from the leadership team of other non-profits, and of course to get insight into the available technology and best practice. So that's now in September. It's moved to a virtual event, 100% virtualized, and it's spread over the mornings of the 3 days between the 8th and the 10th of September. Virtualizing it has allowed us to do all sorts of exciting things, much more engagement, much more reacting to what people are interested in on the day and in the room. So we have some keynote speakers we're really proud of. Chris Akabusi is always inspirational. Emily has taken her organization through one of the most exciting change programs in many years. and Sasha is leading a hugely exciting organization and taking that through a huge period of change as well. As well as that, we have something like 40 expert panelists tackling various elements of change, project, strategy that are available for questions as well. It's absolutely free to attend, so we would encourage you to register. We'll send a link following the webinar. So great, I'm going to pause there. We're a few minutes over time, and thank everybody very much for attending. Rob, thank you very much for your help and on the panel. Thanks for the team, and hope to see you at our next event. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Albert.